Okay, so picking up right where we left off, we added a new list variable to track what the correct answer should be, or what the correct selection should be. We haven't yet changed the images yet. However, before we proceed, in between videos I made a change and I want to get everyone caught up to speed. In fact, I'm going to expand this out a little bit. Oops, going to expand out the... There we go. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. All right, so what I've been saying right along is what we're going to do is we want to coordinate so as the same position is used for each list and then for each image. Well, that creates a problem because this is the 0 position, this is the 1 position. This is the 0 position, this is the 1 position. And then with our images, we start numbering with 1 instead of 0, and it's kind of silly to make a placeholder 0 image. So what I did, and it's going to take a minute for you guys to catch up, is I did two things. First of all, I decided, as we said, so as that we don't have to deal with the 0 position, I just turned it into an empty or a null. So it's just two quotes with nothing between it. Doesn't really matter what you put there because we're never going to use it, and I'll get to that in a minute. We're never going to use the 0 position because it just gets too confusing. So that's the first thing that I did. Second thing I did is I did change these because if you notice at first, like almost all the choices were choice 1, and that really isn't a good way to play. We want variety. So like I said, it's probably going to take a minute to catch up, but you can see I've changed the order so it's blank, well, you know, 2 sets of quotes, safe, salt, cactus, cake, cannon, cupcake, flower, hammer, salt, and spider. Yes, it's okay that we have the same answer twice. We don't actually get this far yet because we only have 6 images, so really only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's really going to stop here. But I showed you this here because if you decide to add more, you've already got that coding there in place. So likewise, I changed this to the corresponding objects that will contain that image. Choice 3, choice 3, choice 1, choice 1, choice 1, choice 2. So it breaks up a little bit more because it was mostly choice 1, and there was no choice 3s, I don't think, in the ones that we're going to use. So sorry for making that quick detour, but like I said, I started to record this, and it just gets really, really annoying to keep saying position 0 but image 1, position 1 but image 2, and I said, you know, let's just put the placeholder blank value here. Like I said, you can put something there if you want, because you're never actually going to use it. Just by doing this, you actually are putting something in the 0 position, because the first value will always be the 0 position, so you need something there. I mean, you could type do not use if you want, as long as it's still in quotes, because it's a value you're just never going to reference. So that's step 1. We put a placeholder value here. Step 2, how do we ignore it? Very simple. In your text pointer random.range, you just never use that as the minimum. We were using 0 as a minimum. Now we're just going to use position 1 as a minimum. So again, my apologies. I probably should have done this from the beginning, but I didn't want to throw too much at you. Now that you've already got the idea of the random range, you can set like a minimum and a max. This will help you. Now, as you notice, I also changed. I don't go all the way out to 11 or 10, whatever this was, because we don't have that many images. We only have 6 per object. And as I said, the higher upper number is not inclusive, at least I don't think it is. So I dropped that down to 7. So 6 images, but the 7th one never comes true. Okay, so that catches us up to where we need to be. Now, where do we go from here? So at the end of the last video, I said I need to make these objects aware of which one should be the right one. Basically, make it aware of this list. I decided the opposite is actually easier. This script is attached to the GM object. It's easier to have the GM track which one is being clicked on because we already have half of what we need. In that script that's attached to those objects, we're already capturing the name of what's being clicked on. And I said earlier, I said that was really important to do early on, to capture what's being clicked on, because we already know what's being clicked on. Now it's just a matter of storing it and not just displaying it. So we're going to create a variable to store it. And it has to be a static variable. So public static, that's how you make it, a static variable. And we'll call this current selection. and it's not a list, so it's just current selection. Now, these are very descriptive. Correct selection and current selection, and there's going to be a place where we're going to compare the two. Does current selection equal the correct selection? Great, but you got to be careful. These words are very close together. You might accidentally select the wrong one. They both start with a C. They both have a double R. They both end with T. So you got to be careful that you're grabbing the right one. And when you start coding for a while, you stop seeing. So keep that in mind. Maybe abbreviate this a little, like CUR selection. Whatever, it's your choice. Again, the naming in and of itself means nothing. This is for the benefit of the developer. That way it's self-documenting. All right, so public static, and we have to say what this is. Public static string. Oops. Sorry about that. So it's a public static string. So just like these, they're strings. So now what we're going to do, so we save that. We're going to come here to image, the image script. And just as we track this, well, just as we capture this, we now need to store it somewhere. So we're going to store it in that static variable. So game flow is where that variable is declared. So we have to type in game flow, and there it is, current selection, right on the top. Equals this. So we're saying that this new variable we just created is going to be equal to the name of what you're clicking on, because that gets set when you click on it. So pretty straightforward. So now that we've modified the variable that the GM is aware of, we can now do something with it. We can now say if the current selection, now we don't have to declare that it's in game flow because we're in game flow. So if current selection is equal to the correct selection, and since this is a list, we have to say what position we're looking at. Well, we're looking at the current position text pointer. And we need a double equal sign. Sorry, a little bit off my game today. No pun intended. It's just I've tried recording this a few times, and I kept making mistakes, and so I went back and made that change. So hopefully I didn't lose anyone. I apologize if I did. But like I said, it gets very confusing to have the notion of corresponding values only to mess it up when we get to the naming of the image. So if the current selection that you've clicked on, again, it gets set by the on mouse down section. If that value is equal to the correct selection, and again, those names come here. So again, that's why it was vital for this or these to match these, because of this moment. We're comparing, sorry, again, off my game today. We're comparing these values to these values, so they have to match. So if the current selection is equal to the correct selection, and the text pointer value that's being pointed at in that selection, in that list, then we want something to happen. For now, we're just going to do debug.log. Correct. Now, here's the thing. I usually like to make this work right away, but the problem is we haven't changed the images yet. And since we haven't changed it, it's going to be kind of confusing to be clicking on the wrong image and have it say correct. So let's go ahead and do that final step, and then we're actually going to have the bulk of the game done at that point. So what do we want to do? In the update section of the image script, which is attached to the image objects, we want to change them to the various images. Well, how do we do that? Well, those images, we can shrink this now. Those images are displayed by the sprite renderer, by the sprite attribute. So, just as you can change the, when we have this, just as through code, you can change the text mesh text attribute, you can do the same thing. You can change the sprite renderer sprite attribute. I don't mean to be beating a dead horse, but I want to demonstrate that once you get a certain functionality, you can modify it to do other things. So you can do get component to change a text mesh, but you can also use get component to change a sprite renderer. And it's the same kind of drilling down, that same kind of syntax. So this script is attached to all three objects, which means a single line of code will affect all three objects. So if and we're going to make one more change. In fact, I already did. Again, sorry, I did this between videos. Since we're about to check what text pointer is equal to, I made it a static variable. So if gameflow dot text pointer equals 1, then we want something to happen. So again, we're using that same get component statement. So get component sprite renderer dot sprite is going to be set to image 1. Now the difference here, sorry for jumping around. Here I was prefacing it with the name of the variable because I'm not actually, with the GameFlow script, I'm not changing the object it's attached to, I'm changing an object it's linked to. In this case, I'm actually changing the object the script is attached to, so I don't have to preface it with anything. And now it's just rinse and repeat. If GameFlow text point equals 2, then you want image 2. If it's 3, you want 3. If it's 4, you want 4. So I'm just going to copy and paste because it's, oops. Or I'm going to accidentally delete because, again, I'm not in my right mind. 2, 2. 3, 3. And you can see it's a pretty simple. Oops, did I hit the wrong thing there? As you can see, it's a pretty simple little compartmentalized statement. If, got the squiggly brackets, get component, and then just rinse and repeat. So if it's equal to 4, then it's image 4. It's equal to 5, image 5. 6, image 6. So we save that. And that should do it. Now, the only thing that it's not going to do is it's not going to score yet. So now the image should change corresponding to the text pointer variable, and it should now display if you click on the correct one. It won't do anything if you click on the incorrect one, though. So not quite there, but really close. So salt, there's salt, and if I click on this, correct. Cupcake, there's cupcake. Click on it, correct. Cannon, there's cannon. Click on it, correct. Now let's click on some incorrect one. Cupcake, perfect, a repeat. We'll click on door. See, now it's just displaying choice 1. It's not displaying that. So actually, I forgot that was there. So that actually helps work as the negative. So, or should I say, rather than having a false negative, it actually shows us that we clicked on an incorrect one. So that actually works out well. So I'm glad I left it there. Cannon, we already did this one. Great. We'll click on the sword. And again, it doesn't say correct. It says choice 3. And like I said, totally forgot about that. It's because of way back when with on mouse down, we said display the name. So that's great. That helps to let us know when there's an incorrect one. So that's going to do it for this one. My apologies. This one was a little bit messier than what I like. It was a case where I found that I had to backtrack and fix something pretty quickly. I should have thought it out a little bit better. Because if I didn't do this, what would happen is it would be text pointer equals 0, image equals 1. Text pointer equals 1, image equals 2. And I'm trying to keep it all aligned. So that should do it for now. I'll probably do a couple more that deal with scoring, have a true incorrect result, because right now it's just displaying it in the debug log. You won't have that when the game is running. The game is just going to have some kind of on-screen indicator. So that should do for now.